Emma Goldman was born in 1869 in a Jewish ghetto in Russia where her family ran a small inn. When she was 13, the family moved to St. Petersburg. It was just after the assassination of Alexander II, and so was a time of political repression. The Jewish community suffered a wave of pogroms. The severe economic hardship of the time meant that Goldman had to leave school after 6 months in St. Petersburg and work in a factory. It was here that Goldman secured a copy of Chernyshevsky's What Is to Be Done, in which the heroine Vera is converted to nihilism and lives in a world of equality between men and women and of cooperative work. The book offered an embryonic sketch of Goldman's later anarchism and also strengthened her determination to live her life in her own way. At 15, her father tried to marry her off, but she refused. It was eventually agreed that the rebellious child should go to America with a half-sister to join another sister in Rochester, New York. Goldman quickly realized that for a Jewish immigrant, America was not the land of opportunity that had been promised. America for Goldman meant slums and sweatshops where she earned her living as a seamstress. What initially drew Goldman to anarchism was the outcry that followed the Haymarket Square tragedy in 1886 in Chicago, after a bomb had been thrown into a crowd of police during a workers' rally for the 8-hour day. 4 anarchists were eventually hanged. Convicted on the flimsiest evidence, the judge at the trial openly declared, quote, "Not because you caused the Haymarket bomb, but because you are anarchists, you are on trial." End quote. Emma Goldman had followed the event intensely, and on the day of the hanging of the Haymarket anarchists, she decided to become a revolutionary. By this time, Goldman was 20 years old and had been married for 10 months to a Russian immigrant. The marriage had not worked out, so she divorced him and moved to New York. Here she befriended Johann Most, the editor of a German language anarchist paper. He quickly wanted to make Goldman his protege and sent her on a speaking tour. Most influenced Goldman to condemn the inadequacy of a campaign for the 8-hour day. Rather, he argued that we must demand the complete overthrow of capitalism. Campaigns for the 8-hour day were merely a diversion. Goldman duly conveyed his message at her public meetings. However, from an encounter with an elderly worker from the crowd in Buffalo, she changed her mind. Goldman began to distance herself from Most and became more interested in a rival German anarchist journal. Here she was introduced to the writings of Peter Kropotkin. She sought to balance Kropotkin's collectivism and his ideas about sociability and mutual aid with her own strong belief in the freedom and autonomy of the individual, which was heavily influenced by the egoist and individualist ideas of Max Stirner and Friedrich Nietzsche. This belief in personal freedom is highlighted in a story where Goldman was taken aside at a dance by a young revolutionary and told it did not become an agitator to dance. Goldman wrote about this, quote, "I insisted that our cause could not expect me to behave as a nun, and that the movement should not be turned into a cloister. If it meant that, I did not want it. I want freedom, the right to self-expression, everybody's right to beautiful, radiant things." End quote. In the early days, Goldman supported the idea of propaganda by the deed. In 1892, together with her occasional lover Alexander Berkman, she planned the assassination of Henry Clay Frick, who had suppressed strikes in the Homestead, Pennsylvania factory with armed guards. She even tried, unsuccessfully, to work as a sex worker to raise money for the gun. Berkman only managed to injure Frick and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Goldman tried to explain and justify the attempted assassination, insisting that true morality deals with the motives, not the consequences. Her defence of Berkman made her a marked woman, and her lectures were regularly disrupted by the authorities. In 1893 she was arrested for allegedly urging the unemployed to take bread by force and was given a year in Blackwell's Island Penitentiary. She was imprisoned a second time for distributing birth control literature, but her longest sentence resulted from her involvement in setting up no conscription leagues and organising rallies against the First World War. Goldman and Berkman were arrested in 1917 for conspiring to obstruct the draft and given 2 years. Afterwards, they were both stripped of their citizenship and deported along with other undesirable so-called Reds to Russia. FBI Chief J. Edgar Hoover, who directed her deportation hearing, called her and Berkman two of the most dangerous anarchists in America. The plus side, though, to deportation meant that Goldman got a free ticket to Russia where she was able to witness the Russian Revolution at first hand. She had decided to bury the hatchet of Marx's conflict with anarchism in the First International and initially supported the Bolsheviks. However, in 1919, as Goldman and Berkman travelled throughout the country, they were horrified by the increased bureaucracy, political persecution, and forced labour that they found. The breaking point came in 1921 when the Kronstadt sailors and soldiers rebelled against the Bolshevik regime and sided with the workers on strike. They were attacked and massacred by Trotsky and the Red Army. On leaving Russia in December 1921, Goldman set down her findings on Russia in two works, My Disillusionment in Russia and My Further Disillusionment in Russia. She argued that, quote, never before in all history has authority, government, the state proved so inherently static, reactionary, and even counter-revolutionary. In short, the very antithesis of revolution. End quote. These views were unpopular among radicals as most still wanted to believe that the Russian Revolution was a success. When Goldman moved to Britain in 1921, she was virtually alone in radical circles in condemning the Bolsheviks, and her lectures were poorly attended. On hearing that she might be deported in 1925, a Welsh miner offered to marry her in order to give her British nationality. With a British passport, she was then able to travel to France and Canada. In 1934, she was even allowed to give a lecture tour in the United States. Sadly, in 1936, Alexander Berkman committed suicide due to the pain he was suffering from poor health, months before the outbreak of the Spanish Revolution. At the age of 67, Goldman went to Spain to do her bit for the struggle. She told a rally of libertarian youth, quote, "Your revolution will destroy forever the notion that anarchism stands for chaos." End quote. She disagreed with the participation of some members of the CNT-FAI in the coalition government of 1937 and the concessions made to the increasingly powerful communists for the sake of the war effort. However, she refused to condemn the anarchists who joined the government and accepted militarization, as she felt that the alternative was state capitalist dictatorship. Goldman died in 1940 and was buried in Chicago, not far from the Haymarket martyrs, whose fate had changed the course of her life. Emma Goldman has left behind her a number of important contributions to anarchist thought. In particular, she is remembered for incorporating feminism into anarchism, which had only been hinted at by earlier anarchists. Goldman campaigned and went to prison for the right of women to practice birth control. She argued that a political solution was not enough to get rid of the unequal and repressive relations between men and women. There had to be a massive transformation of values, and most importantly, in women themselves. She argued that women could do this. First, by asserting herself as a personality and not as a sex commodity. Second, by refusing the right to anyone over her body, by refusing to bear children unless she wants them, by refusing to be a servant of God, the state, society, the husband, the family, etc., by making her life simpler but deeper and richer. That is, by trying to learn the meaning and substance of life in all its complexities, by freeing herself from fear of public opinion and public condemnation. Only anarchist revolution and not the ballot box will set woman free, will make her a force, until then unknown in the world, a force of divine fire, of giving a creation of free men and women. Thank you for listening, everyone. All the best.